am now repulsed by nerd culture. Late 20s female here. Since childhood, I have been into things that are considered nerdy. I've never clung to the label for the sake of it or anything, but as a child, my friends and I were into things such as Pokemon, Digimon, Sonic. Then it became books like fantasy books, Warrior Cats, Twilight, Hunger Games, Harry Potter. Then in my teenage years, it was JRPGs and video games and anime and manga, making AMVs on YouTube and talking about our interests at lunch. Then it was Star Wars, then it was Star Trek, then it was Spider-Man and Marvel, and all my time was spent on Tumblr being involved with this stuff. Then I went to university, and it was RWB and Naruto with friends. Then after university, it was more young adult books and video games like the Nier series. So overall, you can see I've had a long history with things that have been considered nerdy. I've been involved in these communities since 2007, attended conventions to shop for my interests, listened to emo gothic music, the whole shebang. I enjoyed a world that felt like I was connecting to like-minded people who were kind, smart, more understanding of the world and tricky issues, and I could just speak to about my interests and have fun with. The past 10 years, however, there has been a slope downwards into something I really don't like. There's enough conversation already about how nerd culture has become less creative and edgy and more consumerist, which I completely agree with. However, there is another side I don't see talked about. Fandoms have become irredeemably vile. I'm aware there were bad fandoms before, e.g. Star Wars. However, there was mostly a welcoming sense of belonging, I feel. The kindness and intelligence seems to have been replaced by everyone getting offended and angry at every little thing. I'm talking the culture war extremes, like people complaining about woke because a gay character shows up versus fan artists getting death threats because they drew skin a bit too light, for example. Being hateful and abusive at every bit of content, making fun of and over-policing each other. The general language used is abusive, angry, and negative about everything. It quickly becomes overly sexual and fetishist. Communities have become very overdramatic and hostile, rather than a fun bit of escapism. It feels like bullies and sex pests are now running my old hobbies. Additionally, I no longer feel comfortable with these groups out in public. Whereas I enjoyed these events before, the last time I went to one, a video game concert, it stank of body odor to the point I felt nauseous. Everyone was very poorly groomed, and people were walking around with very cringy, out-of-place meme shirts that were borderline pornographic. They were very loud and obnoxious and socially awkward and not considerate of others with their volume and litter. I felt really horrible for thinking all this because it was so judgmental, but I swear when I've been to these concerts before, people just dressed very nicely and were more considerate of their surroundings. There are also a lot of neurodivergent people involved in these communities, and I find it upsetting how much they ridicule and antagonize neurotypical people. I myself am neurodivergent. I can understand venting because there are absolutely a lot of issues we face, but the constant attitude creates an us versus them mentality that is so unhealthy. It has come to a point I am now more friends with neurotypical people because I can't stand the negativity and unkindness anymore. On top of all that, the nerd stuff I used to be into kind of sucks. The things like Star Wars, Trek, Naruto, etc., all kinds of shows and games have all changed their styles and content to the point they are either seriously declined in quality or have just become completely different to the content I fell in love with. It all feels too manufactured and corporate and is now getting polluted by generative AI nonsense. The type of books I used to like seem to have disappeared and have been replaced by the fandom with trashy, unhealthy romance novels. In general, the style of everything has changed, so it's hard to find something that contains what I used to love. If I do finally find something I like that is new, the nature of the fandom just isn't the same kind of fun hobby it used to be. And the community always felt like half the reason it became a hobby, I suppose. I feel like all of the things I like and the communities that surrounded them are now gone, and it has made me depressed. Gradually, I began to fall out of love with nerd culture hard, to the point I now think I feel repulsed by these interests. I feel very sad about this, because all my friends are into this sort of stuff, and I'm starting to feel disconnected from them. And I've noticed my personality going the opposite way, and I'm getting into reality shows, becoming more about looks, into fashion. I don't know what's happening. I haven't read a book in a year, and the one I've just picked up is Bridget Jones's Diary, and that's only because I like the film. Can I just say, oh my gosh, that book is stupidly posh? The characters are so rich, and yet it's supposed to be relatable. I feel awful about the way I feel, that I've become so disgusted by this label and these hobbies. They bring a sort of anxiety in me rather than delight. And I've become more embarrassed by the idea of being seen to like this stuff, or be associated with anyone deep involved in it. I now get secondhand embarrassment seeing people participate in it because I know how fucked up the communities surrounding these things are. If I meet someone new and they're into this sort of stuff, I'm apprehensive because I fear they won't be very nice people, and I'm unfortunately proven right every time. I don't know if I'm overcompensating for my bullying and loser image at school. However, I do genuinely feel that nerd people themselves have become far more judgmental and mean and mentally unhealthy, and it has drained my interest to the point where the interest tank is dry. And because I don't want to be grouped in with the fans associated with liking these things, my view of the very products have become negative. It doesn't make me happy anymore, and now I don't know what does. It was my escapism and saved me in hard times. And I feel extremely sad about this. Like a huge chunk of my identity and joy is gone, and I don't know who I am anymore. What do you guys think? Let's discuss in the comments. Follow and like for more stories.